remain in the city for a while.
Okay, so I think we have all three panelists. So I do have a list of questions here that we can use if there are not a bunch of questions that come from the students in the chat. But I think the best way that we could do this is that I can have all of you introduce yourselves and your programs. And then I'll start out with a question about how are programs appealing to underrepresented minorities in medicine? And then we'll go from there. I think I sent you all the list of questions that we can pick from. Did any jump out to you about questions that might be particularly helpful for students to hear?
I thought that for our process, I thought the board score question was a good one because I know students talk about that a lot.
Okay.
And I've got a lot of questions about the other stuff, you know, whether applications will then all boil down to step 2 or whether that'll become an arms race for research and stuff like that. I think that's a good discussion point based on the questions I've received so far in the last year and a half.
Okay, got it. The other questions that I've seen some of my mentees ask a lot about are the virtual interviews. And is it really worth it to try to get in a second look if they do like an acting internship or after their interviews? So I think that we can go there. And then also along the lines of board scores and how to be a competitive applicant, they ask a lot about letters of recommendation and specifically how to get letters of recommendation that are in the field that they're applying to. Okay.
Excellent. Hey, Ricardo.
Hey, how are you, Dick?
When are you moving to Cleveland, man?
In 2 weeks, 2 weeks.
Okay, so is everybody ready?
Yes.
Okay, let's get started. I am trying to figure out how to get you all at the top.
I would like to not be in the spotlight.
I think this will work. Okay.
All 50 years will show up if you do it that way.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Internal Medicine Road to Residency panel. My name is Sears. I am a geriatrics and palliative medicine physician in New York City at Mount Sinai, and I'll be your host. And we have 3 doctors here who are so excited to talk to you about the application process for internal medicine, and we're here to answer questions for you. So we have some questions prepared that we'll speak about, but I encourage you all to use the chat, and that way I can pose those specific questions to our panelists, okay? So we'll start with introductions. Dr. Wardrop, would you like to go first?
Sure. My name is Dick Wardrop. I'm a MedPeds trained clinician educator. I grew up in Pittsburgh and went to college at Virginia Tech before doing the MD PhD program at Ohio State. I then did MedPeds residency and a medicine chief residency at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Had my first stint in medical education as a faculty member at Correa Clinic in the Virginia Tech Correa School. Was eventually recruited back to UNC, where I became the program director for the MedPeds program. Had a brief stint as a vice chair in the University of Mississippi until COVID happened and decided to come to more favorable climate, and actually was very happy to be recruited to Cleveland Clinic to become the medicine program director there. We have one of the larger medicine programs, I think, in the US, not the largest, but certainly one of the larger ones. We have 150 plus residents. When you factor in our prelim residents, we actually have about 175 people in our program. The Cleveland Clinic is enormous, and so a lot of the sub specialties of medicine are also fall under our core program of medicine. So we end up having a very large footprint at the Cleveland Clinic. Super happy to be here. Happy to talk about our program and answer any questions you may have. So thanks for having me.
Perfect, thank you. Dr. Okwuosa, would you like to introduce?
Hi, yes, hi, Sierra. Thank you for inviting me. My name is Tochi Okwuosa. I'm a cardiologist at Rush University Medical Center. I'm not involved in any sort of program directing at all. But I do mentor a lot of students, residents, and fellows, cardiology fellows here at Rush, and actually nationally, I do mentor quite a bit. My background is that I went to school at Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine, and then I went to University of Chicago. That's where I did my internal medicine residency training, as well as my cardiology fellowship. And now I'm the director of cardio-oncology at Rush University Medical. Oh, sorry, I did the preventive cardiology fellowship at Northwestern, and now I'm the director of cardio-oncology program here at Rush University. And again, like I said, I do mentor quite a bit, and I'm really excited to be part of this panel and to speak to all of you.
Thank you so much. Okay, Dr. Correa.
Thank you so much for having me here, Zira, and it's a pleasure to be in this panel with friends. And my name is Ricardo Correa. I'm an endocrinologist by training, so I'm the program director for the endocrinology fellowship at the University of Arizona College of Medicine in Phoenix. Soon moving to where Dick is. He will be my main program director. I will be the program director for the endocrine fellowship there at the Cleveland Clinic. But my job here at the University of Arizona is that I'm the director of the diversity, equity, and inclusion for graduate medical education. So I oversee all the programs and how these programs can improve the recruitment. And we can talk about holistic review of application on toolkits that we have developed and all of that at the University of Arizona in Phoenix. I'm originally from Panama, so I'm an international medical graduate. But when I came, I did my residency at the University of Miami in Jackson Memorial Hospital program. Then I moved for my fellowship at the NIH, where I train in endocrine and then neuroendocrinology. And after that, I had started my career being a clinician, a researcher, and as educator, and then became the program director at the University of Arizona. First, I was in the East Coast at Brown, then moved to the West. That I didn't know where was Arizona, but finally I have been 5 years there. So it's really excited. I think that one of the things that I have been doing a lot in the Valley is integrating all the SNMA LMSA chapters and make it a strong one, even though there's individual chapters, but make it a strong one, and then trying to mentor the students. So I work along with the college. So thank you so much for having me.
Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone. Okay, so let's just jump right in. Our first question is, how are programs trying to appeal to underrepresented minorities in medicine when it comes to residency?
I'm happy to start since I introduced myself first. It's really interesting. I think the thing that I've seen in the years since I've been a program director, and obviously coming in a new institution, when you're at one institution, you've seen one institution's approach. I think in general, I've seen a lot of more consensus statements and a lot more emphasis on this important issue around recruitment, around DEI, coming from organizations such as ACP and AIM and a lot of our professional membership organizations as well. But I think individual programs at some point have to decide that this is a priority initiative and take appropriate steps. And so I can tell you what we've done in our program is we've definitely, since I've taken over as PD in the last 2 years, and developed and embraced a much more holistic approach. We've also, partnered with local medical schools and some of their initiatives, their diversity pipelines, actually doing some work in the high schools and things like that. I think we've always been viewed as a welcoming place amongst the people that are here. And what I've tried to do is employ some of the things that I've seen in other institutions where you actually have to, have a welcoming, literally a set of programs available. So one of the things we've done the last 2 years is we have a scholarship at Cleveland Clinic that people from outside can apply to and have a completely paid for rotation. Unfortunately, the medicine program only gets 1 out of the 10 slots, but it's better than nothing. And so we've used our slots incredibly wisely, I hope. My hope is that advertisement gets out to multiple specialties and not just medicine. We're very selfish in medicine. We have such a big program. We get over 6,500 applicants. So I think our biggest strategy is kind of hopefully what I'm doing tonight and what I've had our chief residents do and what I've had our faculty do is to be visible and be available and go out and meet students and to be welcoming and to be as transparent as possible about what our mission and what our values are. So again, I'm happy to be here, and this is sort of part of that intentionality. But I think if you were to come here, and it's really too bad that we don't have in-person interviews, because I actually came for an in-person interview as a faculty member when I took this job. And I think you see a lot more of how welcoming and how even in such a big place, how intimate and family-like our program is specifically. And that is something that you can only see when you actually come here. So we're trying to recreate that in our experience with the application and the interview process virtually, which is difficult. So that is always going to be a challenge, is really showing people how we really are if they were to come here.
And if I can, oh, you want to go, Toshi? Well,
Fine, go ahead.
yeah, if I can add, I think that they summarized everything that, but let me tell you a personal experience that had nothing to do with application interview, but how can later on in life this apply to. So when I was offered the position to move to the Cleveland Clinic, the first person that I thought was Dick. And I called him, and the first thing that I asked is, what is the environment regarding diversity and inclusion? Because that's what I was looking in a place. I was looking in a place that have mission and vision that applies really to the place. Everybody have a statement on DEI. Now you can look, everybody have a statement, not everybody put that statement into practice. And what Dick mentioned was that all the things that they were doing. So even though I did an interview in person, it was virtual interview, that helped me a lot because we have worked together. I have trust on him, so that helped me a lot. So just going back to what is happening, let me tell you, at the University of Arizona. So definitely it was a movement since 2016. We are a recent College of Medicine. We're in existence since 2007. We realized that there was the people that comes, the physicians that comes to do residency and fellowship, they don't represent the population that is living in Phoenix. And this was a big gap. So at that time, it was a perfect time for me to move because they hired an associate dean for equity, diversity, and inclusion. And then the associate dean was a JD, so they didn't understand a lot of what is happening in residency and fellowship. And I was the counterpart in the hospital. And then we start doing certain things. One is first getting the data of what is the reality of the population in Phoenix. It will be different from Phoenix to Cleveland to Louisville to any part of the country. So you have to have your standard population. And then from that population, seeing what is missing. And definitely we know that underrepresented minorities are missing between Latinos, Black, African American, and Native Americans that represent a big chunk. And then we start doing in UME a lot of work. There was very strong work on pipeline programs, as Dick mentioned, from elementary school to high school, trying to bring the pipeline. But in GME, we start working on what was the problem, why we don't have X amount of population in the residency. And basically was the issue that there was nothing standardized. So we create a holistic review of application where things that everybody considered that's the most important, and we are going to talk about probably later, like scores and all of that, get less importance than something that they were not considered in the past. A lot of the things that are right now is very important, for example, for our recruitment, is people that have worked on health equity at certain level. So if you have been volunteering in a clinic or something like that, That's been the key key in the recruitment. I can tell you, it was not easy. And another story that I want to tell you, when I present this in 2020, that was in the middle of the pandemic, and we have to do all of this, many of the programs directors stand up and leave and say, we are doing that. What is the quota that you want to have? I already have 25% diversity, that people from the underrepresented minorities. That we were not talking about that. We were talking about making equitable for everybody and that everybody get the same opportunity. So it's a process. I think that really we will see a change in the next generation, and the next generation will not need to talk about this because we are building the pipeline, very strong pipeline. But at this time, our process is trying to get into these meetings to tell them that there is a program that is applying diversity, equity, inclusion process. And also the other thing is that trying to participate in the community. So people that are just from the community stay in the medical school, continue all the pipeline until staying in the state. So that's something that is happening. I think that many institutions that have taken this option has been seen increase. The last thing that I want to mention, when we did the data, because everything DEI is so difficult to get data, but when you get data, you get excited. And then we did the data of how our toolkit was working, and I saw like there was a 3% increase in gender and 2% increase in Black African Americans and 2% increase in Latinos. And I said like, oh my God, 2%, that's nothing. And then somebody with more seniority told me, you know, this has not been seen. Like there was no increase for many years. Right. That you see a 2% increase is a big change. So I was expecting a 50% increase, like everything. No, but it's slow. I think that's what we are aiming. And more than happy to answer any questions specific from those programs. Thank you.
So I think actually that's a good transition to our next question. I have a couple of questions in the chat here. But one question that we have is, how do programs have a preference for applicants that are in their region or in the area? And if so, how do people who are outside of the region make their interests known?
Sierra, could you please repeat the question?
The question is, do programs have a preference for applicants that are in the region? And if they do, how do applicants who are outside of the region make their interests known?
I probably am not. I honestly think that Dr. Wardrop is probably the best person to answer this question because he's a general medicine program director. But I'm just going to kind of go back and just make a couple of comments on the initial question that we had, which I do agree with my two colleagues on the topics on the points that they made. The one thing I have to say is that being proactive. I think one thing that I advise residents, students, fellows that are interviewing that are underrepresented minorities in medicine is when you go to interview, you have to make sure that the programs that you rank highly show that they're proactive about recruitment. Because if it's just any minority program says, oh, we have minorities, oh, we're recruiting minorities, that usually doesn't work. You want to also make sure that the underrepresented minorities in that program are happy, those that you see. You want to talk to them, want to get a sense of how they're doing within that program. You also want to get a sense of what the leadership looks like in that program, right? If you have a leadership that is homogeneous, that is just, the prototypical white male, then you know that there's an issue in that particular program, right? You want to make sure that the leadership represents the view of the people, the programs that they're trying to recruit, and not just, the leadership in internal medicine, but I'm just saying overall within that unit. It may be that they have, a program director that is, African-American in one place, and they have a Caucasian or a white program director in a different place, or an Asian in a different place, a woman, a man, that kind of thing. You want to make sure that they're overall diverse in the leadership positions, because what ends up happening in a lot of institutions is that you get just parallel moves from the represented minorities while the typical white male is moving up. So you want to make sure that they're inclusive in that sense. So there are a few things to kind of look for that gives you a sense of how a program is doing and how welcoming they are and how active they are about recruiting underrepresented minorities overall. Dr. Wardrop, I'm leaving the question about locations to you.
Oh, yeah. Okay, sure. Absolutely. So that's a really good question. And actually, I think the answer is nuanced, and sometimes I can't speak for all internal medicine programs, but I can speak for some of the ones I know about and then my own. So depending on the medical center and depending on the, the status of the hospital or the healthcare environment, if you were to apply as an outsider, if you will, to some states that consider themselves, providing primary care physicians for the state, or if they consider they're part of their mission being safety net hospital for the state, or if their medical school only takes, like Mississippi did, they only took Mississippi residents. So you can think about what your chances may be just with all things being considered in a place that, looking at their class, who's in their class. If they look like there are a lot of people that are from with a 3-hour region, then you can probably, take your clues that they either don't know how to recruit somebody from far away or isn't a priority for them, or it's so self-selecting culturally that, that isn't a place that really, thinks about taking people outside of their own group. So I'm not picking on any particular medical center, but you see this from time to time among safety net hospitals sometimes, and amongst, sort of state medical school type places. Then you get into a whole nother category of places where, there's no medical school attached. And, in some community programs, you'll see, people from literally all over the world that are coming, and, you recognize that they're, trying to fill their training program, not haphazardly, but they are literally looking at all comers. And so then you come to a place like Cleveland Clinic where, we have several medicine programs just within our own system, within 20 miles of our hospital. Plus we have Akron General, and we have, university hospitals, and as well as Metro, all within the city limits. And we end up all competing for the same, complement of semi-interested individuals. It's like, oh, I want to be in Cleveland. And what does that mean? There's like 8 choices. So the wick gets turned up for us as far as the stakes go when it comes to competing for, really good applicants regionally. So if you look at where our folks are from, we actually, we literally recruit, I would like to say, the best and the brightest from all over the world, literally. If you look at a world map of where we get some of our graduates from, it's anywhere on all the continents right now, except for Australia and Antarctica, I think, are represented in our program right now. We also take a good number of osteopathic residents. I mean, if you look at our osteopathic complement in our program, it's significantly high. It's about 15 to 20%. And then if you factor in our international group as well, the total is about 35%. So we have a different kind of diversity as well, as far as degrees and country of origin. But we also do feel very strongly about serving the community within the greater Cleveland area. This is now an OKR for the Cleveland Clinic. We feel, as a medicine program, that we also feel very indebted to the population of Cleveland. And even though we aren't necessarily a safety net hospital, we feel that our missions align educationally and from an equity standpoint. Learning about the disparities in East Cleveland and addressing those in our resident population, or resident clinic populations. That is really a big part of our mission. And you might not look that to know at the Cleveland Clinic and, know that we have an Abu Dhabi clinic and a London clinic and a Florida clinic. But that really is a mission of our institution right now. So sometimes you have to look a little deeper than the maybe what the banner would say or what the reputation would be about what the mission of the place is. But I think you look at all those things and you can understand, how someone from far away. I will just speak for myself. I see incredible value in people coming from across the country if they're willing to. Now, Cleveland is not the best destination for some people that don't like cold weather and snow. Maybe they don't like the Cleveland Browns, for instance. It's hard to know sometimes, but we can't change our geography. We can only change our sort of how we appear and what we're really all about and communicate. and getting back to that other thing, how do you make your needs known, or how do you make your interests known? Eris does have some functionality around signaling. To be honest, I haven't figured that out yet. I don't know what to make of that, because there's pings and there's other location preferences, but I'm a very basic person. I grew up in Pittsburgh in the Midwest, and I spent a lot of time in the South. It's kind of like what you see is what you get with me. So if you've applied to our program, I take that as a signal that you want to be there, at least on some level. And then reciprocating that, if you get invited for an interview, we absolutely want you in our program. And if you were to come to our program and interview, I would tell you that and mean it. And that's the bi-directional signaling that we look for. There was also a question in the chat about, is there such a thing as being the first one in a place where there's never been anybody? One of our best second years, I just wrote him a letter of recommendation, is from Puerto Rico, and he's just a fantastic resident. I'm not allowed to play favorites, but he's definitely probably the best citizen, if not one of the best clinicians in that class. And I think he may have been the first when he came. I'm not sure, but we take every person as an individual as much as we possibly can. But I will say that it helps to have a connection of some kind to the residency, if not through someone in your alumni network or a friend or something like that. That isn't necessary at all. Once you contact the residency, you apply, and if you get an interview, obviously you're very much alive in the process. And then we have some systems in place that I'd be happy to talk about, sort of an ambassadors program, where for those people that just want to have more information, you don't have to go through the PD, you don't have to go through the APDs, you don't have to have this like risky communication or high stress communication. We want you to get the information and see us as much as you can when we're not on interview day, so you really make the best choice for you. So sorry to be so long-winded in that, but I think it's different things for different programs based on that regional attraction. And I'll speak for us, we very much prize folks that are coming from long distances, and we consider them as any other applicant in our process.
Okay, thank you for that. There actually is another question about audition rotations and the hidden curriculum for internal medicine specifically, and asking, how can students do their best in their audition rotations, and what resources do you recommend that they use so that they can be stellar applicants and acting interns, I believe. Dr. Wardrop, you might not be able to see that question. It was sent directly to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So something that I can tell, I'm looking at a similar question that is there in the chat, what is about any particular aspect of personal statement, things like that. So when you're in a rotation in a place that you really want to be, or if your school send you there, or you ask for a rotation in a place, the best thing is that you need to impress the team that is with you. And this means that I always tell this person that if you have to arrive, the first one to arrive and the last one to leave, and then be very proactive, looking for evidence, reading articles, presenting, trying to get friendship with the residents, so the residents can let you in charge and let you present, that will impress the team. And the attending that is there definitely will get such a good impression that if at one point you tell them, hey, I want to apply to this program, that attending, even if that is not the program director or not, that attending will communicate with the program director and will tell him, I have an outstanding student that will apply to our program, and he did this. So there are two kinds always of students. The ones that want to rotate, and I have this a lot in Miami, the ones that want to go to Miami, has party, do not spend time and just go under the bridge, and nobody look at you, they don't ask you questions, nobody will remember you after that. But they are the students that give the extra mile. That's the one that you remember. I remember as a resident, even people saying that the residents don't have power. As a resident, you have a lot of power because you were like, hey, this one is amazing. I will go to my program director and tell them, hey, this this student is great, has done this. So there, I think that's one of the most important thing is just be outstanding in that rotation. If that's the place that you want, give the extra mile in any area. It doesn't have to be in internal medicine. In any area, I think that will work really good in your favor. Regarding, and I just want to mix with the personal statement, I think that something that we look in the personal statement, and I review application from medical students to the internal medicine program, to the endocrine fellowship. And something that you are looking is energy and passion for going into medicine. I don't want to see somebody that, I'm going into medicine, and I see this in the fellowship more than in residency, but that, I want to go into endocrine because most likely I want a GI, but GI is very competitive, and then I want to go, and you notice that in the letter, like in the personal statement, you notice that. People say like, they will not notice. Yes, you notice that there is no passion on whatever you want to go in. So every time that you write a personal statement, show your identity. It doesn't have to be that you are underrepresented minority. That's not a token. We're also not getting tokens because we are URMs. That's not what we want. We want qualification, that to be considered the same as another because we are qualified for doing that, and we want to see passion in your writing, that you really want what, in this case, internal medicine, you really want internal medicine, and it's not because OBGYN was very competitive, and now, okay, I want to do residency and I want to go to internal medicine. If that is your attitude, just decide where you want to be. At this point, well, all of you have decided where you want to be, but it's very important that that decision, put it into paper so they can understand. And if you have sometimes, so there is some gaps, just explain that in your personal statement, because there are people that, took 1 year for something, or explain that in your personal statement, because that is very important. When you're reading the entire application, sometimes you cannot get, and then what the people will do is like, oh, this applicant didn't care in medical school, but probably you had a big event in your family and you have to leave for a year or something and then return back. So explain clearly in your personal statement that doesn't diminish your qualifications.
I can comment on the personal statement. I totally agree. It should be a representation of you, who you are. And it's hard for me as an editor and reader of a lot of personal statements to make, comments, because it is personal. I mean, it's the definition of personal. I mean, there's a couple of things that, I definitely wouldn't do. I wouldn't experiment with new punctuation and capitalization, like E.E. Cummings, the poem, and, making your words like William Carlos Williams in The Shape of a Wheelbarrow, for instance, like he did. But I definitely think you can be creative and nuanced in the things that you choose to talk about. And I wouldn't just recapitulate your CV either. I mean, because we already have extensive information. But you also don't have to have a sob story. You don't have to have like this, burning bush moment in your life to be qualified. We just want to learn more about you. I think if it's a decent narrative of who you are and what you're about, and if you do have something you want to express that you've had to overcome in life, we definitely want to hear that. But if you don't feel like you have that, don't feel like you're less than or anything like that. I mean, I had Kawasaki disease when I was 14, and I had to go to the Northwestern at Lurie Children's Hospital as it being a clinical study when I was a kid. And it's like, that actually was a huge inflection point in my life, but it just didn't make it in my personal statement in residency because, I mean, it was so far down in the tapestry of my life. So anyway, I'm just encouraging you to be yourself during the process, and the light will come through. And show your personal statement to people, let them read it. People that know you, make comments, and then just go with it. That would be my advice.
Can I
remember that first? Just remember that usually the advice is that the first sentence in your personal statement be something that's catchy, sort of. It doesn't have to be silly, catchy, but just something that makes the reader want to read more about your personal statement. You know, like my colleagues have said, personal statement is personal. So it's very important that your passion for medicine, your passion for what you want to do sort of comes through, whether it's true stories that you want to tell in there, or whether it's just something about your life, or just how you're passionate about being in the ICU and seeing a patient who's ill in the ICU. Just whatever that lets that passion shine through is what keeps me interested to say, hey, this person seems like they really, really love what they do. And that's really the sort of thing that I think most of us want to see. And then kind of going back to the rotation topic, you know, Dr. Correa had pointed out that we should, that usually if you're on a rotation, you should try to put in all your best as much as possible. One of the things that we all recognize in medicine is medical knowledge, right? So it's really important that your medical knowledge shines through as much as possible, right? We want to make sure, most people want to make sure that whomever they're getting is competent on rounds, is very, very willing to work hard, is a team player, and that they have a great fund of knowledge, right? So overall, you want to kind of encompass all of this in your rotations as much as possible. And, you know, talk to your residents, talk to your fellows, the people that you're on rounds with, you know, apart from the attending, and just kind of get a sense from them about how things run ahead of time so that you kind of know how to fit into the team and be a part of the team and figure out a way to set yourself apart. You know, I always tell my residents, you know, if you read based on the patients that you're seeing, you give, number one, better presentations because you're presenting with knowledge. You're not just presenting a patient and then somebody says, oh, you know, you presented this chemotherapy. What sort of cardiovascular side effects do you see? And then you don't know. So if you read up on these things, you present with knowledge, you present with intelligence, and then when you ask your attending questions, they're questions that make sense. They're questions that show this person is actually seeking knowledge, not just because they want to ask a question, but because they really are interested in wanting to know. So again, just having that passion shine through to say, this is really what I want to do with the rest of my life, is those are the things that people see. And those are the things that make people recommend you to your, to the program director, or recommend you to whomever else, the chair, whatever, anybody else, and say, okay, I'm going to write you a very strong letter. It's just for me. The people that I've written strong letters for are people that I see that passion in. It makes it easy. It makes it very, very easy to write strong letters for such people.
If I could make a comment about the visiting student issue too, you know, when I was at UNC, for instance, it was very competitive for students to get rotations. I don't think it was very equitable or fair who got the rotations. And I worry about that at any place, about like who can pay to travel, who can actually go away from their home if it's far away. So I actually, as much as I can, like, I just want to de-emphasize, you don't have to do that to match it in our program. Because I do think it's unfair to expect people to pay. Like, I couldn't afford to go anywhere when I was in medical school. You know, I had a wife and a child at the time, and like we were barely making it. So like going away on an exotic rotation just wasn't an option for me. So I'm not saying that you can't, but if you do, you know, make the most of it, like it's already been said, and bring your A game every day that you can, but don't put so much pressure on yourself that you feel like that you're gonna, you know, make or break on a daily basis. I have a card, I've tweeted it at times, and I've actually shown it to residents and medical students I work with. It's pretty worn out now, and it has a smiley face on it, and it says, relax, you're amongst friends. So I try to make visiting students feel that way, to feel welcome. And so I would encourage you, if you do go away, you know, try to seek out the PD, seek out the APDs, figure out what's going on in that program, engage with the residents. But if you're not getting that vibe of like, relax, you're amongst friends, that may not be the place for you. I don't want to oversimplify things, but there is a lot that goes into the sort of the day in and day out, like, friendliness of a program that you do get a chance to experience if you are able to go to visit a place. So again, doing the best you can clinically, shining, meeting as many people, asking questions, experiencing the culture. But if you're getting red flags during that visit, you just want to be honest with yourself about that might not be the best place for you.
And I just want to mention that the comments I made were not just for visiting students, but just for everyone. When you're doing a rotation, you got to put your best foot forward as much as possible, and let the passion shine through.
I just want to, sorry that I jumped with the personal statement, something that it's all of you remember when you write your personal statement for medical school, please do not write the same type of personal statement for residency. It's different. I read personal statement for medical school, and I think that Dr. Wardrop mentioned like the Kawasaki, that is for medical school. And you get impressed, oh my God, this person overcome all of that. That's for medical school. For residency, you have to read, it's a different process. You have to read certain amount of personal statement, and you get the one, I think that the authenticity that was mentioned before, you get those ones more. And please also do not start your personal statement with a phrase of any important person, like just be yourself. We want to learn from you, what you are about, not what other has done, but what you want to do, and why you want to come to that area of in this case, internal medicine.
Thank you, everyone. Okay. And if I may, even throughout my application process, applying to medical school, applying to residency, applying to fellowship, it was not the same personal statement, but the inspiration for why I wanted to be a doctor had not changed, and why I wanted to be the type of doctor had not changed. And even like to this day, I will still look back at my personal statements when I have a hard day, and to remind me why I wanted to do this in the first place. So if you are as authentic as possible and you are really trying to be yourself, you will really even have that to inspire yourself and know that you can do this. So I agree with all of them. Be as authentic as possible. Okay. I think there's another question in here about the university letters that are required for the application. I think this is a good time to talk about things that affect the application, such as board scores and letters of recommendations.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? I was trying to catch up with the chat.
Oh, no problem. I'm kind of merging a couple of questions into
Okay.
it, but essentially when you're looking at applications, what makes someone a competitive applicant, from the letters of recommendations that are required, the specific university letters? I think someone's talking about the MSPE, and then we can also talk about board scores and other things that make somebody a competitive applicant.
I'm happy to answer that, because we've really changed our process. Last year was a hallmark year for where we really started to change our process and do what I think is more holistic. And I guess people define holism differently. We look at many different data points to come up with a score around a person's entire application. We look at a number of points, and we also recognize that some of them cannot be scored in some applicants depending on where they're from. So immediately we break down in our process those from outside of the United States medical schools, as I think it's already been alluded to, that some of the information that we get is not as identical to what we may get to a U.S. allopathic or U.S. osteopathic senior. So we have a slightly different holistic scoring tool for those from outside the United States to go to medical school. With regards to the basics, I'll be honest, when I was a MedPeds program director, I was extremely superficial, and I would invite people based on their step 1 and step 2 scores, and if they had honors in medicine and peds and surgery, I don't even know why I picked those 3. They got an interview. We had a very competitive interview process, but I was more than happy to sort of dumb it down for myself, if you will. Now, that being said, we actually got some pretty outstanding applicants, but it was kind of like, fighting with a bazooka all the time. It's like I have these huge board scores and these huge grades, and I went to this great sounding place. We were missing a lot of very high quality people, I guarantee you that, and we were marginalizing a good number of people too. So this is not my confession to you. I'm just saying how we've evolved over time. So last year, we get 6,000 applications. We still have to be able to draw some lines and decide who our best people are. But the number of data points that we look at and the matrix that we sort of paint as a mosaic, if you will, of different things, on our scoring system, I think we have about 25 points available. There's only 1 point available for board scores, and it's right now it's based on step 2 score. Step 1 doesn't even matter at all in our system. You just have to pass it. We stopped giving double credit like if you get into AOA or Gold Humanism Honor Society, I don't even know that we're going to score that this year because a lot of our applicants don't even have that in their medical school. We'll look at the medical student performance exam letter, the dean's letter, if you will, and we break it into cognitive and non-cognitive elements where we look at, you know, class standing if it's mentioned, and we give that some attention, but we don't give you a lot of points for that. For instance, we actually look more at your community service, your leadership activities that are longitudinal of high quality. And we look for themes in a person's application that sort of span multiple years. And we actually give just as many points for that as we do for research. So I hate to give away all of our secrets, but we actually really do spread it out over a lot of different behaviors and domains. I hope we're doing the right thing. We had an extremely high quality group of applicants and interns that are matched in our program. And I will also say the other thing that we do besides invite is when we interview people, the interviewers were very upset with me last year because we did not share board scores, honorary status, and or grades with the interviewers. We had the medical school, they got a chance to see their CV, like if they had publications and stuff, but all this other stuff that we know is linked to some biases and, you know, sort of like ladder of inference kind of stuff, we took that away. So if it came up in the personal statement or if it came up in conversation, but, you know, people weren't really, you know, coming into the interview with AOA and honors in medicine tattooed to their forehead. So we let people make their own decisions based on our interview. And our interview questions were very behaviorally oriented. Everybody got asked a similar question pool. And oftentimes we let it up to the interviewer to sort of choose a random number about what question they wanted to get asked. And we had anchors tied to their responses so that there was very little variation, very little inner user variability as far as the raters go based on their behavioral responses. So that's what we got going. I hope that that's a good system. We feel better about it than we did just about, you know, just looking at grades and board scores. I would say that we've really put a premium on community service and community engagement because that's where I'd like to see medicine moving. And that's where we'd like to see medicine moving in our program. Everybody that comes here is smart. I mean, everybody that graduates from medical school is pretty darn smart and resilient. So we don't need to keep counting that extra and keep counting it over and over again. So.
Yeah, I want to echo that. So basically, when we start our process 2 years ago, we did the same thing. So less emphasis in, we do tiers and a lot of less emphasis on scores, honor societies that are that we know that can introduce some bias. A lot more emphasis on you as a person being represented in your CV. I always tell people to write everything that they have done, from leadership to everything, and a lot of good things from the letters of recommendation. I think that for international medical graduates, the question was MSP. MSP is not standardized outside the US. So everybody has their own way of the school, of their dean of the school writing your performance. So it's totally different. We try not to emphasize that with IMGs. We do a lot of reading the letters of recommendation to balance, to obtain data from that, to obtain that. And I think that that's something that have changed. And that's something that is very important nowadays is any work that you have done in DI, a lot of health equity, but if you had done anything during your medical school in the US or outside the US, where you have been working on this is very important. So a lot of the schools, a lot of the programs are looking for that. Medical school is also looking for that, but a lot of the programs are looking for this kind of person that is not just can recite the book, but also will be a great physician and has demonstrated that because has contributed to the community, has done extra work, he has been on leadership in whatever, in any organization. I admire every time that I talk with the chapter chairs of SNMA and LMSA. This is volunteer time. You are doing your medical school, and you are being a leader in that group. And that's something amazing. You have to put that be very proud of belonging to an organization, and then being the chair, vice chair, secretary, wherever is your position. And if you're an IMG, there's multiple organizations international. When I came as an IMG, I remember I was a president for the Latin American medical student, and I never thought that was important. I said, like, oh, nobody in the US will know what is this, but I put it anyways in my, and that impressed a lot of the people, a lot of the programs where I interview, because they asked me, like, oh, what is this organization? And then I can chat about that. So I think that nowadays we are looking more for leaders that will make change in the community. So put everything that you have done in that part of the application.
And then part of the medical school, the residency application also is, I mean, I know leadership is important to community services, no doubt. These are the sort of physicians that we're all looking for, the people that truly care about the community and the patients. It is true that also a good number of programs also looking at research and publications and things like that as part of ways that they can use in ranking. So something to keep at the back of your minds as well, that, I tell my residents, yes, research is extremely important. My medical students, research is important. But just remember, you can also get easy publications out of things like case reports, right? So not everybody is a researcher. Not everybody needs to force themselves to get into research and force themselves to write a research paper, because it's not for everyone. Not everybody is motivated by it. But if you're saying you're a clinician, then I'm pretty sure that there are going to be some interesting cases that you see on rounds that you can write up as an abstract, present at a national meeting, which also means that you're scholarly, you're also able to present, which is all part of leadership as well. And you can also, then convert that abstract into a paper. So I think those all are part of the things that look good on your application. And then there's also review articles that you can write. You can also write simple things like op-eds, something about society that impresses you, or something about your leadership role, or something about the community service that you're engaged in. So those kinds of scholarly activities are also a lot of things that speak to speak to your passion for medicine, speak to how involved you are in medicine. And also, again, looks good on your CV. So something to think about as you're doing community service and as you're seeing patients on rounds. You can literally write about any of these things that also look good on your CV as well.
Okay. All right, so we have just under 10 minutes left. I will ask maybe one more question, which is, what advice do you have for students when it comes to interviews, especially virtual interviews?
That's a great question. Most places have gotten this down by now. I think the first year was like, we have no idea what we're doing. And last year we're like, we think we know what we're doing as a program. We actually, by the end, had a pretty slick operation and tried to, I felt a little bit like a Disney performer, that I tried to bring the same energy, enthusiasm, and legitimacy to my 30-minute presentation, which I ended up doing 28 or 29 times, sometimes twice a day, sometimes 7 times a week. I didn't have to drink a lot of caffeine to do that because I generally like my job, but I definitely tried to have it down pat. We had a good system. So I would argue that the applicants need to also be similarly prepared and energetic. Is as hard as it may seem to get up for an interview that's maybe a couple of time zones away and you're getting up at 7 and it's 10, or we had some people on the West Coast, it was 3 hours behind. We had a couple people in the Middle East and it was like a different day. They showed up dressed up. They were there. They weren't, they didn't mention the hour difference until later. We was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what day it is where you are. So I would really just be prepared for anything, and bring that energy and enthusiasm as much as you possibly can. I would also say know about the structure of the day. It's one thing to have an interview appointment and to know when you have to be on, but know what other optional things that go along with virtual interviews. We have virtual open houses the night before. Sometimes we have them 2 nights before. I would take advantage of those opportunities if you can. I would also understand that the interview is more than just your time one-on-one with someone. Not that we're always watching you, but we all are always watching you. So if you're late, if you are not prepared, if you show up, come back from the break room or however the electronics work in the interviews, if there's a glitch, that's not always a bad thing. And also, programs don't have it perfectly. We had we had a couple of days where we just people got disconnected. We have no idea why the videos didn't work, just be prepared for that and be good humored about it. I wouldn't overjudge a program too harshly if there's technical errors, because that kind of stuff happens all the time. I don't know if that's a good answer, but I think those are some of the things I would think about, since we can't be in person.
Yeah, I think that so some things that in at the University of Arizona in Phoenix, we start having virtual interviews that was part and part since 2016. So for us, the pandemic was not a change of how we were doing things. It was a little bit different. There was a certain publications done in 2019 in the AAMC where the program presented the results. So one of the things that during all these years, it's very important for the applicants is, it's be professional during the entire session of the interview from the beginning. Something very important is please answer to the program administrator. If that person send you something that you need to answer, do not delay in answering, because even though that person is not part of the committee, of the selection committee, is there and can say, oh, this applicant never answered to me and appear that. So it's minimal things. So be very when you arrive and that's the person that receive you, it's the same thing as it was a physician that is interviewing you. So the interview start at the moment that you enter the Zoom, Team, whatever platform are you using, into and ends whenever that is closed. So when you have residents there, be professional, and then the same thing that you will do with the people that are interviewing you. So during the entire process is very important. And professional means you dress professionally for the interview. We try that if you can blur your background, that is important. We don't want to see where do you live, if you have a lot of expensive thing behind you, or you have a lot of not expensive thing behind. We don't, blurring is fine. We want to see you. And then behave as you were behaving in a normal process. I know that at the beginning we start saying, look at the camera, not at the people, so they can see that you are looking at the face. Those are things that now is everybody that is Zoom out, because we're so tired of it. No, we look at the faces. We are not looking at the camera. So that will not affect in anything that you are doing. But I think that the most important thing is be very professional the entire time and ask questions to the residents and ask questions to your interviewers, the same thing as you will do it in person. And then definitely be on time. And if something happened, then always most likely the program administrator will send you what is the contact info that where you can if something falls down, we can contact you, because sometimes it had happened to us too, that we are in the middle of the thing and something happened and then it shut down. So you have to call the person and interview it over the phone, because the system shut down. So this will happen everywhere. It can be a light raining and something, or it can be the system shut down. So be ready for that kind of things. But the last thing I want to say, always, I know that Dick mentioned that, would always be energetic. I know that they ask you the same question and it's the same thing that you have to repeat again, but do it as it was the first time, because that person that is interviewing you do not know that in fellowship it's 9 people interviewing you. So not 8 more people ask you. In residency, probably it's 2 or 3. But they have the same energy the entire time. I know that it's tiring, but that makes difference.
And a great point, Dr. Correa, about having energy. I think that's one of the things that keeps your interviewer engaged. You engage your interviewer engages you, and that kind of creates a very good interview cycle. So I think that's really very important. Somebody had asked a question about second look. And one thing I would say is that, you know, if you're looking at a few programs and you're trying to decide and you have an opportunity for a second look, I'd like the second look in person. If you have the opportunity to go in person, I would take it, because you never really completely understand a program until you've gone. Physically, you're there and you're interacting with the other residents there. You know, if it's a fellowship program, you're interacting with them and all the program director and everybody else that makes up the program. You never really fully understand an institution till you're there fully. So if you have an opportunity, if you don't have an opportunity, it's fine. Everybody kind of makes do with what they have. But if you do and you're able to, then yeah, going in person is definitely worth it if it's a program that you're particularly interested in.
Yeah, I just want to, for some programs, a lot of programs, they have some statements that they make at the end of the interview, which can be interpreted a couple of different ways. It's the sort of code of conduct, if you will, for ERIS and inappropriate contact with programs. AIM, the Alliance for Academic Internal Medicine, came out with some guidelines, and they actually recommend discouraging second looks for a couple of different reasons. One is it can create some ethical quandaries around how do we, you know, how does the program decide to offer second looks to some? Do they offer them to all? Is it fair for people that can't afford? Does it create disparities? So we actually have a policy that we don't have any official second look policy, which I know sounds like not having a policy is having a policy. So we don't, you know, it's a free country. If people want to come visit, we don't like hide from them or anything, but we discourage people from having what's considered program sponsored second looks. Now, that being said, if the GME operations at an institution has second looks and they want to welcome you, then that is definitely something you want to take yourself up on. I know a lot of medical centers do that. We do not currently do that. So we're going to do the next best thing in our program is for people that really have an interest in knowing more is linking them with a resident. And it's not going to be like a wink, wink, nudge, nudge, don't tell, but it, like if there's genuinely an opportunity for that person to come and, you know, see the medical center, we're not going to discourage that. What we can't do is let people go on rounds. We probably shouldn't, you know, have people attend conferences because that's just not fair to everybody. So I just wanted to put that out there, not to disagree at all with the comments, because I did second looks at a couple places and it actually was why I matched at UNC. But we just want to make sure that we're being as fair and equitable to everyone as we can.
I agree. Something that you mentioned is that, well, we do virtual second looks. We don't do in person, and it's organized by GME. In this case, by the DEI. I organize it, and it is basically a way to make the applicant to understand what are the things that we are doing, and where we're doing our second look is to show them. It's not so much who attend, but to show them our program, what they are doing. For example, our GME community was doing, we divided in wellness, in health equity, and then we put them in small groups. And then a leader from that group will tell them what we are doing. And if you want to know, it's a way to compensate that you cannot see the program, but at least you can learn what the institution is doing to foster this kind of things. And I think that, for example, we usually do in January. So everybody like already interview and mainly is to try to convince people to come to the program so they can see what are the things that we are doing. But definitely, we had a big discussion in the AAIM about second look in person, and unless there is an uncoupled match, like a match where there is a rank list first from the programs, and then a 2 weeks period where applicants can go, and then a match where then the applicants can do. Unless that happen, it's a lot of unequity, like not equity that will happen if you go, because if the program director see you, oh, this person want to come here, and it's not the best resources to use. But hopefully we can see in the future for this separation of match, and if that happened, that will be different. But for now, I think that we are still keeping, we are not doing in person at all anything. Everything is virtual, even the second looks are virtual. And it's nothing to do with the program, it's a GME, so anyone that apply for any of the programs will attend.
Okay, well, everyone, thank you even for staying for this extra 4 minutes. A special thank you to our panelists for participating and answering the questions for all of our students. I would like to encourage all of the students, if you haven't, to sign up for the mock interviews through SNMA and LMSA, and make sure that you schedule your interview accordingly. I think those are coming up soon. And again, there are email addresses in the chat. Thank you so much for attending, and have a good night.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Of course.
Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you. Thank you, Sierra.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.